Hello there, Juranish of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. Today, smoky looking tie, because we are not going full peat, but we are going to have some elements of peat in today's whiskey. The whiskey comes from Talnua. Patrick Miller, the man who got me interested in pot still whiskey. This comes from Colorado. Now, the name may fool you a bit, but it comes from just outside of Denver. And all they make there are, in terms of whiskeys, pot still whiskeys. So they've got 5 different whiskeys that they are currently offering, and one of them is a peated version. Now, I did an interview not long ago, I guess probably a year ago, with Patrick, and actually it's got to be over that because he's the one, like I say, we had our conversation back and forth, and he was telling me about the distilleries in Ireland, and I was like, I gotta go. That's why I'm featuring the book that resulted from that here on my table. And I just loved the character of his whiskeys. He sent me 5 different whiskeys to sample. I went through all 5, and I was looking for a common denominator between these pot still whiskeys, and I found them. It was that grain note coming through. It was a little lemon and some peppery bite coming in on the whiskey. And that peppery bite comes from the use of unmalted barley, as does the nice body of the whiskey as well. So when I was in Denver not too long ago, I finally got there to be able to buy a bottle. Unfortunately, they're not distributed across the United States. Hope is that someday soon it will start making its way into the eastern part of the United States. It's going to be like McCarthy's, where I'm just locked into really not being able to find bottles of it very easily. But these pot still whiskeys are a little bit younger, okay? But honestly, that's kind of what sells me on these and what got me interested in them, because so much of that character is in them, and they do not taste like young whiskeys. Now, this whiskey is an 18-month plus old whiskey, so it's a year and a half. That doesn't seem like a lot of time, but it shows how good their distillate is, that it can spend the amount of time it does spend in a barrel and then be ready for consumption. And you're not getting yeasty notes, you're not getting tannins, you're not getting all of these things that would kind of draw you away from trying the whiskey again in the future. Now, I tasted all 5 while I was there, and then I was like, I'm coming home with a bottle, and I just love the peated. After talking with Patrick, the thing is, you might think, oh, well, they're peat smoking their barley, and are they peat smoking the unmalted and the malted, or just, well, they're not smoking any barley whatsoever. What they're doing is they're keeping their stills clean. Because this is one of the things that happens with peat, is that if you don't have dedicated stills for it, it's more than likely going to start picking up, everything else you distill in there is going to pick up that peated note. And so it makes it really tough. It was interesting that even when I was at Tullamore Dew, they had 2 different sets of 3 stills because they wanted to keep their pot still whiskey separate from their double distilled single malts. So that's really interesting to know that they felt these things even needed to be separated, because pot still whiskey has a character, and you don't want to taint your stills. And it would be really interesting to talk to somebody who's doing both and see if they're running them on the same still, if they notice any residuals left over from the previous run when they switch from doing a pot still whiskey back to doing a single malt whiskey. So how does he get the peat in there? Very simply, he gets Lafroig barrels, brings them to his establishment, and then he's basically finishing his whiskey in used Lafroig barrels. So these are used barrels, because Lafroig is getting their barrels from Maker's Mark, and then they're aging Laphroaig, and then they're being sent back here to throw some additional aging on. And so mostly what he's doing is he's picking up that bit of peat. Now, I say Laphroaig, and the first thing you're going to think is, wow, I bet this is going to be weird because we're talking about a mountain distillery with a medicinal character to it. Well, no. This does not have a medicinal character to it at all. It's really interesting the impact that the Laphroaig barrel has on this. So let's do a nosing. 43% ABV. And I got to tell you, in a way, I almost think I'm nosing a Jack Daniels in a way, because the first thing I get is banana nut bread. And today it's been a whole banana nut bread experience for me. In nosing this, the smoke is there. It's a nice, gentle smoke that mixes in with the vanilla. It's almost like a smoked vanilla bean. Maybe a little bit of a pepper note, the grain coming through. It's really nice how subtle the smoke is on it. It's not overly subtle. It's not like when you're drinking a Johnny Walker Black and you're like, wait, where is this? Oh, there it is. This, you'll know the smoke is there, but it's not overly aggressive. Cheers. It is truly what I love about pot still. Just a nice mouthfeel to it. I was thinking walnuts or something like that, but then banana nut bread came across my mind, and I'm like, yes, it's definitely there. The grain is there. The nice bit of oiliness is there. What it doesn't really have so much of is the pepper note. The pepper is there, but again, it's very gentle. There's something about this that reminds me of a bear claw when it gets to the finish. It's like, it's got a little sweetness to it. It's got a lot of nutty notes to it. It's got the vanilla going on in there, and it's got that grain note going on top of all of that. And then this little earthiness and smoke that plays into it. It's almost like you're having a bear claw while you're out in the forest camping. Although I'm not a camper, but I can sort of figure it out. There's a little char in there too, but I think mostly it's just got a really nice scent to it. And when I went, I sat in there for a good 3 hours. It was great because Denver had free public transportation all weekend. So I was basically riding the train all over the place. And the train stop is not that far from where the distillery is. So I just kind of leisurely walked over there, consumed a decent amount of spirits while I was there, and then was able to get back on the sub and go back to my hotel, which was over near the airport. So that was really nice to be able to do that. Public transportation in the U.S. Can you believe it? Beyond the northeastern cities where we know it is, but it's nice to see that you can get around town. And what they were trying to do was encourage people, I think, to get back on the subway system, because after COVID, I think a lot of people kind of avoided it. And so they were trying to entice people back in. So they went a whole month or a couple of months, I think, with free transportation out there. It was really nice. But for the whiskey drinker, fantastic. Now, the tough one was when I went to Leopold Brothers, because you probably need to get off the stop and then take a Uber the rest of the way, because it's a long walk. But I did it, and I had to get a bottle of water because I was sweating quite a bit on my way there. Weirdest weather, because it would be in the 90s one day, somewhat dry, and then the next day it was pouring rain and 50 degrees. So, felt like I was in Amarillo. Really, really nice whiskey, and keep your eye out for Talnua. I think these guys love the fact that they are stretching themselves and making a pot still whiskey, and they've actually inspired a distiller overseas to make a sour mash whiskey, because they're like, hey, look, you guys are doing our style, we're going to take your style. So it's cool. It's cool. Everybody, it'd be interesting to taste what a sour mash whiskey out of Ireland will taste like. So just growing and experimenting, all of it is good. Hope you enjoyed this. Hey, by the way, if you haven't joined the Patreon, go ahead and do that free. If you want to just keep up with what's going on with me, if you have a Patreon account, if you want to opt in for one of the pay levels, then more content for you there. And give me a like if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you'd like to watch more of these down the road. Until next time, cheers and Slainte.